It's on. All right, in the name of God, the gracious, the merciful, we give him praise and thanks for his mercy and goodness to the human family. If all the trees upon the earth were pens to write with, and if all the oceans were ink, and then another 7 oceans to add to its supply, the writing would still not be enough to explain the glory of God, for he's the exalted, all-powerful, all-wise. I greet you all in words of peace. Assalamu alaikum. This is Brother Shareef with the Hour of Power. Before I get started, make sure you subscribe and go to the channel Hour of Power, Shareef Hamid on YouTube. I have a lot of exciting, informative videos and messages on there to lift the mind, body, and soul of our people. Yesterday, I did part 1 of a plea to get black high school athletes to attend HBCUs, and I discussed the amount of money white colleges are making off of the backs of our athletes, mainly McDonald's All-Americans in basketball and 5-star athletes in football. So, like I always do, I'm bringing the proof. Today, I have a special guest, my good friend, Mr. Will Lomax, who is a high school basketball coach at Fuquay Arena,
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Which is outside of Raleigh.
Outside of Garner.
Outside of Garner, which is still here in the state of North Carolina. He's very athletic. He knows the sport, basketball and football, but particularly basketball. So I'm bringing an expert here to push this movement. I'm not playing. Push this movement to get our athletes, even if it's just a few of them, to go to HBCUs to tip the balance, because everyone shouldn't have everything. You gotta share something, because we built this country and we're building this college basketball powerhouse, which is whether it's Duke, North Carolina, Syracuse. They wouldn't be where they are without us. So it's some of the wealth should be shared, and HBCUs shouldn't be struggling the way they are. So without no further ado, Mr. Will, tell me about yourself, how you got into basketball, and to be the coach where you're at now.
I've been playing basketball since I was young. I started early. It was a game that I love to play. I'm from Columbus, Ohio. I played at 2 schools in Ohio, Marion Franklin High School, and I graduated from Columbus Afrocentric High School. Coaching-wise, I moved here about 7 years ago from Ohio, and I met a coach by the name of Danny Strong. He played at NC State, played 17 years overseas. Hooked up with him, and after that I interviewed for the job, and after that it was a go. I coached. I took off last year. I coached my first year there. I coached 2 years there. It was a great 2 years for me. First year we went 5-7. The second year we went 11-4. So it was a great year, great way to build. The coaching experience that I have, I've learned it from many people. For one, Mike Thornton, I've learned from him since 8th grade, since I met this man. He instilled in me so much in coaching. It took me a long way. I'm coaching here in North Carolina today, but that's a little bit about me. I played at a school in Ohio, in Circleville, Ohio, at Ohio Christian. I went to a junior college to start off with. While I was down there, I had some minor health problems that I had to go back home. I passed out in a practice, and I had a heart condition. So my time in playing basketball was kind of limited, but I still gave it my all and still went out there and tried to do what I could.
In our discussion before, when you were talking about, you said that was Ohio Christian.
Yeah.
Didn't you mention that in your 8th grade year, which you've been in middle school, that you actually had the pleasure of in person watching LeBron James play? Because
yes, sir.
Columbus is only about a few miles from Akron.
Yeah, it's about an hour 45 away from Columbus. I had like you said, I had the pleasure of watching him when I was in 8th grade, actually in Cleveland. He played against a team. I can't remember the team that it was called, but I actually had a chance to watch him play. Amazing guy. He talked to us for a little bit before he had to play. Our coaches was kind of trying to ease us away from him to let him get ready for the game, but being that young, seeing somebody as talented as him, you can't do nothing but want to talk to this man, want to see this man play. I got a chance to see him play when I was in 8th grade. He actually came to Ohio and played against a team in Ohio, Brookhaven, which is no longer in service in Ohio, which was probably one of the best schools in basketball in Ohio for a long time. I've seen him play. I've been watching him since I was in probably about 7th, 8th grade.
So even when you were in 7th, 8th grade, his name was out there?
Oh, yeah. It was still out there, 7th, 8th grade. I think he broke a backboard when he was in middle school, I think. Or either middle school or in high school. He broke the rim off the backboard, one of them. But I had the pleasure of watching him play. I've seen a lot of people play, from Tyhon Johnson to Raylon Adams. Man, there's so many people. John Williamson.
Didn't you mention Michael Redd? He used to play for the Milwaukee Bucks.
Yeah, I had the pleasure of meeting Michael Redd too. Him and my head coach, Mike Thornton, they were really good friends. I got the pleasure of meeting him and actually working one of his camps. I think I want to say I was in high school when I worked at camp. Coach Thornton was working there, and I got to work it with him. But I've seen a lot of talent from Ohio, man. I've got to see a lot of players, man, from Andrew Lavender to Brandon Fowles. It's been Brandon Ivory. It's been so many players that played in Ohio that were great that most people don't know about. But if you go to Ohio and you ask about these players, their name rings bells around Ohio.
And in Ohio, what is more known? Is it basketball, football, or does it depend who you talk to?
It just depends on who you talk to. At one point it was basketball. At one point it was football. It's a give and go each year, so it just depends on who you're talking to and where you're at in Ohio, in Columbus or in Ohio, period.
You did get a chance to watch my video, which was part 1, a plea to get black players, black high school athletes to go to HBCUs.
Yes.
What was your take on the video, or part
loved
1?
I loved it, man. It's something that really needs to happen, man. Most of these kids that are coming up, this younger youth, they really don't look at HBCUs as a school to go to. But if you look at it just down here, NC Central, they played in the tournament this year. I think the kid's name is Cole. I think he averaged like 30 points a game this year. Like they're starting to get up there. It's just.
Now, what class is he in? Is he a freshman, a sophomore? I'm not too well versed on college.
I want to say he red-shirted, so I think he's a junior this year, either a junior or a senior this year. But the boy can go. I think he was on ESPN a couple of times. He can play. It's not an easy league to play in. I know a couple people that played in the HBCU league, and it's not an easy league. It's a tough league to play in.
Now, my main point in the lecture, so to speak, or the video, was we have all these McDonald's All-American athletes or 5-star athletes in football, but for the most part, all the talent, which mostly are black, are going to places like we're here in the South. So we got Duke, North Carolina, NC State, Wake Forest, but you got Syracuse, Kansas. They're going to schools like that, and then I broke down the statistics of the amount of money the athletic department is bringing in each year. And I even had someone on Facebook say, well, I went to a HBCU and black athletes were leaving or wouldn't go because nothing is there, but that was the whole point of the video. What is your take or your perception or opinion on the lack of exposure for black schools, and what this movement that we're talking about, or this plea that we're talking about, is it is it a reasonable plea or reasonable something to ask for?
Right now, for HBCUs to compete with those higher schools like Duke, the Dukes, the Kentuckys, the UNCs, it's hard because if I'm coming out of high school and I have a school saying that, look, we're going to be on TV 95% of the time, we're dressed down in Nike, we're dressed down in any name brand that you can think of, they're going to want to take that. If I have an HBCU that's coming to me, hey, we're sponsored by Russell or somebody like that, we're not on TV 95% of the time. We may get one game on TV. It's hard to compete in that range. You're not going to see most kids take that HBCU route because of the being on TV. They want to get that TV experience. They want to play in front of thousands of fans, which that shouldn't have anything to do with it. If you can play, you can play. It doesn't matter what school you go to. HBCU, some of them, they get thousands of fans to come to their game. Central,
it's not televised.
Yeah, it's just not televised. It's in the MEAC conference, which is a strong conference. If you look at it, some of these HBCUs, Norfolk State, North Carolina Central, I think Norfolk State played Ohio State back in the 2000s. Central, they've been to the tournament twice, I think. It's a growing league, and if, like you said, if we can get some of those players, those top players that come to these HBCUs, it'll take over. And I don't think people want to see these HBCUs take over. And that's the bad part about it, because if we get these top players to go to some of these HBCUs, man, you could never know. One of them might be ranked in the top 5 in the nation in college basketball.
Do you remember, you're a little bit younger than me, that's why I call you my little big brother, but do you remember the Fab Five? Back in the 90s? So those guys, Jalen Rose, Chris Webber, was it Ray Jackson, Juwan Howard, and what was the fifth guy?
Who was it? Would name those ones again?
Chris Webber, Juwan Howard, Ray Jackson, Jalen Rose, and there was a fifth guy. We'll think of it. Anyone out there listening, tune in and let us know who that fifth person is. Someone just tuned in, but I can't see. But let's do a little hypothetical thinking. Imagine if those guys would have, so all those guys were McDonald's All-American, right? Because you're a scholar in basketball, not me. All those guys were McDonald's All-American. Somehow they made a communication to all go to Michigan. They didn't just haphazardly, just all, you got, I don't know where they ranked in that McDonald's All-American, but they had to be, let's say, no less than the top 20. They all had to communicate and say, look, let's start this powerhouse and all go to Michigan. That's how they started. That's how they made history, because they were the first freshmen starting 5 to go to the national championship. Let's say they would have went to Howard. Let's say they would have went to Hampton. How would that have changed the scope or the paradigm of an HBCU then, not just then, but moving forward? Because let's say I'm gonna let you in because I'm getting hyped just thinking about it. How would that would have changed if those guys would have said, we're going to Howard or Hampton or wherever?
It would have changed a lot. It would have changed a lot if they would have went somewhere like that. Man, it would. Who knows, like, where the HBCUs would be at right now? Like, it would have set. It would have been a trend that they set.
A trend.
And I'm telling you, it would have been explosive, man. It would have been powerful. And that's what most people don't know. Like, it's a lot of NBA players that came out of HBCUs. Avery Johnson, Ben Wallace, Charles Oakley.
Ben Wallace?
Yeah, he went to Kyle Hogan. It's a junior college in Cleveland, Ohio. He went there.
You Ohio.
Yeah, he went there for 2 years, and then he went to Virginia Union. Charles Oakley, Virginia Union. Most people don't. These are old school players, but it's still players that came out of HBCUs and made it to the NBA. Daryl Armstrong, he came out of a HBCU.
Daryl Arms. Is that the same one that played with Michael Jordan?
He played with Mike and he played for the Orlando Magic. He
Okay.
didn't get drafted, but he was the 6th man of the year, most improved player. Avery Johnson, he came out of Southern. He won an NBA championship, got coach of the year. Now he's coaching at Alabama. Ben Wallace won a championship. Charles Oakley never won a championship, but Charles Oakley was a bad boy.
Right.
Rick Mahorn, bad boys. Like, it's so many people. Earl the Pearl.
Well, how about football? Didn't Jerry Rice go to a HBCU, Mississippi Valley State?
Yeah.
We just talking about basketball because your expertise is in basketball, but we could go all down the line in football too.
Like, I have a cousin.
Answer this for me, Will. Excuse me. While I'm thinking about it, you talked about a trend. So we're just being hypothetical. If the Fab Five would have went to a HBCU back then, let's say, because they went to Michigan and they fell short 2 years in a row. But what do you think? Talk about the trend it would have set, not just hypothetically for the school they would have went to, but for HBCUs in general. What do you think kind of trend it would have set?
It would have been a crazy trend because most African Americans didn't see that, and if they would have seen that, it would have blown HBCUs apart, man. One movie that I love to watch, and it's a great movie, and I don't know if you ever seen it, but it's called Hoop Dreams. Spike Lee was on there, and he was talking to the young African American males and telling them why they were trying to get them to come to their school. And if they would have went to an HBCU, I think they would have won a national championship at an HBCU. I really do.
Right. I hear some sports announcers joke sometimes, and not on this topic, but they'll say things like, well, with a team like Kobe and Shaq, you could put me, you, and 2-3 guys off the street and win that. So, you know what I mean? You hear people joke like that. They talk about, who's the best, has the best dynasty, who has the best team. And they play with a team with players like Jordan and Pippen. You could put 2-3 guys off of the street and win the championship. So you get 3-4 players, to go to one of these HBCUs. It's going to tip the balance. And in that video, and listeners, I encourage you to go to my YouTube page and listen to the lecture I gave. I gave the breakdown of the amount of money these schools are making off of these players. Now, you went to junior college?
Yeah, I went to junior college.
Let's talk about real quick some of the tactics that they use with you and what they, I think you already mentioned it, of how they're selling it and how if they was to go, let me frame it this way, if they was to go to HBCUs, and this is the sacrifice that I'm asking the players to make, they may not see the direct benefit, but moving forward, some of the same things that people say the HBCUs don't have, like gym equipment, all the flat screens in the locker room, and all the things that make you a superior athlete. Can you talk about what you saw when you went to school and how they put the bait on the hook to reel you in compared to what HBCUs don't have?
Oh man, it was crazy. It's a tug of war, man. When they get you there, they sell you a dream. They sell you a big dream. Some players, like I tell my players that I coach, basketball only lasts for so long. God forbid anything happens to any of these young kids out here today, but you could walk outside tomorrow and bust your knee up, and your basketball career is over. And that dream that they sold you is gone. And just the recruiting process is so crazy, man. They'll come to you and tell you what they can give you, what you'll get.
Now, was all that legal?
Yeah, most of it is legal.
I'm talking about according to NCAA.
Yeah. Now, you'll have some coaches that'll pull that string, or they'll go outside, and you'll have that outside person come in. And just like in Louisville, how they said Rick Pitino was out here buying women for players when they were coming down there. You'll have stuff like that. But at the end of the day, you have to make the choice for yourself. You can't be caught up on what they had, because at the end of the day, once you're gone from that school, you're not going to get that. You're not going to take that stuff home. Those flat screen TVs that they have in the locker room, you're not going to get to take that home.